Hello and welcome to Divinatory Tarot. My name is Ewan and today we are looking at the Eight of Cups. Now if you've not seen the previous videos in this series, please do go back and look at the Cups playlist, as that will give much greater context to this video. And also please do go back and look at the playlist for the Suit of Wands, as that will give even more context to both this suit, this card, and the numbers of the cards, as I go into much greater depth with the significance of the numbers in the Suit of Wands, as it is the first suit of the tarot. Now if you just want to look at the Divinatory Interpretations of this card, please do go and find the timestamp in the description, but I do recommend watching this video at least once so you have greater understanding of the card. So without further ado, we shall look at the Eight of Cups. A sky of black clouds oversees this grey land, dotted with pools of stagnant water. 5 copper cups sit in these pools, whilst 3 more are on these decaying lily pads. 2 dying lotuses pour out the last of their water into the central cups, which spill into the bottom 2 of the 3. And above we have the sign of Saturn lingering in the black clouds, and right at the bottom we have our first symbol of Pisces in the Suit of Cups. So Crowley describes the onset of this card as thus. This card is not exactly the morning after the night before, but it is very nearly that. The difference is that the night before has not happened. So we can really see here that context of the hangover in this card, except for we didn't even have a good time when we were getting drunk. The excess of emotion or seeking emotion in the Seven of Cups has itself been done to excess. Here in the Sephiro of Hod, that being the number 8, our emotional turmoil has become stuck in an infinity loop. And to know what I mean by that, not only do you have to look at the numeral of 8, which is an infinity loop, but do go back and look at the 8 of Wands card, as that will go into much greater depth as to why 8 is an infinity. So this is not the endless potential of Yesod that will come next, the number 9, but it is a closed system of infinity, whereby we repeat the same experiences again and again and again, much like Groundhog Day. Our intelligence is now suffocating in the cloying vapours of vice. Whereas in the Eight of Wands, the infinity loop of Hod created charged energy, the Suit of Cups is essentially creating a cycle of repeated emotions, and this lessens their potency. As such, we seek more and more and more, to the point where our consumption is necessary in order to feel something resembling normality. Now the cycle of addiction has truly set in, and we find ourselves trapped in a downward spiral. We may attempt to escape with the nectar of our chosen vice, yet it will inevitably spill from our cup, causing us to slip back down into the pit of our own making, as we saw it begin in the Seven of Cups, and do go back and look at that video for much more context. Caught in a prison of repeating emotional turmoil, our minds will eventually numb the sensation. Whether it is an impossibility to reach those new highs that we used to have, or to protect us from our crippling lows. Either way, it will ultimately lead to the neural infinity loop we call depression. Now, to give a little bit of a chemical and biological, psychological, neurological meaning to that, essentially what happens with depression, at least one of the major theories surrounding it, is that when we produce a lot of cortisol over a long span of time, our minds essentially try not to respond to it any longer, because cortisol is a neurotoxin and it eats away at our brain, especially the hippocampus. So if you have ever experienced depression yourself, you may have experienced memory lapses during that time. And the problem is that the brain cannot stop producing the cortisol, but it does try and stop responding to it. And whilst this might sound like a good idea, the cortisol is still getting into the brain, and unfortunately the brain does need to respond to it in order to activate other neurotransmitters such as dopamine and serotonin, because ultimately pleasure and pain have the same neurocircuits, and it's only our experience of them which makes them either pleasure or pain. And this is also the root of things such as sadism. And of course we need that dopamine and serotonin to get out of depression. And I think here in this card we can say that an addiction, or not necessarily always to a substance, but certainly can be to a substance, or a way of being or a way of living, as essentially it's supplanting our serotonin and dopamine and not actually allowing us to have that just natural chemical processes that we saw in the Six of Cups. The feverish searching and taking in 7 has caused us to fall into a dark night of the soul here in the Eight of Cups. And it is our own fears and desires that are keeping the sun from rising. It is an emotional crisis in every sense of the word, and one far darker than that we saw in the Five of Cups. In Geburah, the number 5, we were at least given the catharsis of letting go of the old to embrace the new. Yet here in 8, we are drowning in the mire created in 7 and rotting in the stasis of emotion. A grey nothingness into which and from which nothing is born. There can be salvation from this dismal state, but within the static horizon of Hod, we are blind to it. Something must be done, or we are likely to seek other means to free ourselves from this hell. And when we get to the Suit of Swords, we will see that in the 8, the 9, and certainly the 10 of Swords, we see the mind's reaction to this emotional turmoil. And suffice to say, it goes to some very dark places. So let's have a look at how this is all expressed within the card in the symbols. Put simply, the Eight of Cups is a horrible feeling, whether it is just a hangover after a night out, or something much greater like a crippling addiction or the depths of depression. We have now become stuck in something that has been done to excess. Our minds and bodies have become subdued, lethargic, drained and bruised. There is a foul taste in the metaphorical mouth of life, and we can't spit it out. And we see all these concepts embodied in Lady Harris's wonderful piece of art here, represented by a cold and grey land where pools of polluted, stagnant water offer the only succour in this darkness. The once proud cups are now falling apart. We see them missing parts on their handles and they're chipped. And their copper hue is a nod to the influence of Venus that we saw in the previous card, the Seven of Cups, that led to this. And do go back and look at that card to understand the significance of copper in relation to Venus. The flowers have returned to being these lilies as they had been. They returned to being lotuses as they were lilies, showing us that at least our egos are not in control anymore. However, their decrepit state also tells us that it is becoming a submitted system of control now. Our egos, we haven't transcended them, they've just subdued and submitted to what is happening. It is a perfect unconscious order, one so perfect that we have entered stasis, where chance cannot trigger the opportunity for joy or excitement to exist. The lilies are pouring out their last dregs, having been thoroughly abused. Chemically, this can be seen as the result of the overdose of adrenaline or cortisol that we talked about earlier. And this has racked our brains to the point where they are no longer responding to these chemicals, even though they are still being damaged by them. The irony here, of course, like I said before, is that we need these chemicals to trigger serotonin release, or at least to lead to the results that do trigger serotonin. Thus, we are stuck on both the chemical and psychological level, and the two perpetuate each other's existence. And of course, that stasis that we're on about. Astrologically, we see this state as represented by the heavy influence of Saturn here, which really does not go well with poor Pisces down here. And this is because Saturn represents time, karma, and responsibility. And it really does press down on delicate and dreamy Pisces, which represents freedom, happiness, and of course dreams. However, we have got a faint dawn on the horizon in the background, and this does suggest that there is still some hope for us to get out of this nightmare. Yet we will need to get our heads out of this proverbial swamp in order to see it. And we will see where that goes in the next card, the Nine of Cups, which, as a spoiler alert, is much, much better. So now we're going to look at the Divinatory Interpretations of this card. If the Four of Cups was a dead end, then the Eight of Cups is the end that leads to death, whether that be figuratively or literally. When well dignified, it represents temporary successes, searching, a need for transformation, and reassessment. When ill dignified, it represents despair, depression, emotional stasis, disillusionment, suicide, self-pity, and meaninglessness. The key concept here is becoming stuck in a seemingly never-ending state of being, yet also knowing that we are the ultimate arbiters of our salvation. So I think in previous cards we've talked about what happens when the Divine Masculine overdoes it and we're just doing for doing's sake. And here this is really when the Divine Feminine overdoes it and we're being for the sake of being and not actually doing anything. And again, this really does emphasize the point that the two need to be in balance, the yin and the yang. So thank you very much for watching this video. It has been quite a dark one, the Eight of Cups, but I do promise that things get better in the next card, but what I can't promise is that things will get better in the next suit, for the Suit of Swords is certainly one of the darkest suits of the tarot. Thank you very much for watching this video. If you enjoyed what you saw today, please do hit that like button. It really does help the channel. Of course, if you found it useful as well and informative, hit that like button. And do subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any future videos about the Thoth Tarot, as well as tarot readings that I do, as well as some more technical videos that I do, such as tarot tutorials on different spreads, and also going into depth with things like the court cards. So I hope you are doing well wherever you are in the world. This has been quite a heavy video, so do take care of yourselves, and of course if it has affected you in any way, this video, do reach out for support from those that you love and love you. And there are always services out there more than willing to help you through any times of crisis, because we are one great human family and we all look after one another, or at least we should be doing so. So may peace be upon you wherever you are in the world, and goodbye.